Hi, I am just going to talk about a couple things over your first two threaded discussions. You talked about the Great Schism, and you also talked about Cluny a little bit. And I just wanted to talk about a couple things. The Great Schism, it was a long time coming, and if you read that part of history, you start to understand it wasn't just a sudden thing, and many of you realize that the Filioque was just kind of the final nail in the coffin per se. That was it. They were two very separate kind of cultures. They spoke different languages. They had a lot of different customs. Even church rituals looked different. The Greek ritual looked different than the Roman rite. And the communication thing, and you guys picked up on that really well. You know, not speaking the same language, not understanding each other, and not having the ability to communicate like we do today makes a big difference. I don't know about you, but I'm not wonderful at foreign languages. We're looks like we'll get to go to Rome in the fall, and I'm really excited. But I really think I should probably learn some Italian. I took a half a semester in college of Spanish. I took some French in high school, but it doesn't stick with me, and it's very hard sometimes to communicate and understand, obviously, when you don't understand the language. So language becomes a real big issue here for the church, because they're writing what they believe in their documents, and they're not even really sure they understand each other. And in the whole iconoclast controversy, that whole idea that once the Muslims move into that eastern part of the empire, the Byzantine, the Patriarch of Constantinople wants to kind of play nice with the Muslim faith, and so he says no more icons, because the Muslims believe that as being idolatry. So but the West is saying, well, nothing wrong with icons, there's nothing wrong with statues, we're not worshiping them. It's like today, what we put up pictures of our loved ones around, that doesn't mean we worship them. They're there to help us remember. And so that's the way it was for people in the West. And plus, remember, they did not have the ability at that time, or the education, most of them, to read. So statues could tell a lot, could educate them, just like you're going to see where stained glass windows could educate them. They could learn by looking at statues, learn by looking at windows. They could understand about these saints or this person. So again, we see that this split between the East and West was coming for a long time. And of course, it becomes a power struggle also between the Bishop of Rome and the Patriarch of Constantinople. Now, I think the interesting thing is, you had a discussion on whether you think they'll reunify or not. And you read the article that the Vatican is working with the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Greek Orthodox to talk about possible reunification. I think the issue here is going to be one of unity versus uniformity, and we talked a little bit about that in your module 2, that we can be in union without being uniform, without being identical. In fact, in the Catholic Church, there are various what they call rites, R-I-T-E-S, Coptic rites, Ukrainian rites, Byzantine rites. They are considered Catholic. They're under the direction of the Pope, but they use different rites. They don't use the Roman rite. So like there's out in Oregon on Route 2, there is a Byzantine church. There's something I think in Rossford too, but I can't remember the rite. I don't know if it's Coptic or I don't think it's Coptic. But anyway, there were different rites, and I'm not certainly an expert in all the rites. I'm very familiar and learned in the Roman rite, but not all the other rites that are part of it. But But I think what that shows is that you can have unity without uniformity. And that's kind of, I think, part of the discussion that's going on today with the Orthodox Church. Is there a way that we can have unity without uniformity? You still keep your rights the way you do them because the basic beliefs are really the same. And so, obviously, they'd have to work out the papacy issues, supremacy of the Pope. But there is a lot of talk within the ecumenical community that this is very important to Pope Benedict XVI, that he would really like to work on this whole idea of unity between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church. So I wouldn't rule it out, but as things happen in the church doesn't move quickly, so it's not like it's going to happen next week. But I certainly do see it as being a part of what, especially the Catholic Church, is working for, and trying to look around and say, can we be unified even though we're not uniform? So that's a little bit different way to look at it. The other piece, I think that Great Schism, I think it's an interesting thing. It's interesting to read what leads up to it, and it will be interesting if in our lifetimes that is totally healed and they are reunified. Might happen. The other thing that I wanted to mention a little bit was you talked about Cluny and why that was such an important piece of Reformation. And this is what you're going to find happens so often in the church, that they go along for a while, issues start occurring, and then, they kind of wander off the path, and then there's some kind of reformation that needs to take place in order to get them back on track. Cluny was certainly one of those, and Duke William of Aquitaine was a marvelous man to be able to give the church this land so that they could be independent and actually be about the faith again, and not be bothered by having to be beholding to a landlord or a land baron who may then want to make the rules for the monastery, or even be the abbot himself. So these kinds of issues were really, kind of really muddied up the spirituality of the church. So Cluny kind of took it back to where it needed to be and started that Reformation again. And we start to see, as you're going to talk about here, with the rise of the middle class, feudalism starts to disintegrate, and the church takes on another role here, a more spiritual role. The other piece that I want to mention here, and I said I would because somebody mentioned the whole thing about why is land so important, and I mentioned something about end times. And again, that Holy Land area, Jerusalem, all of that, the reason it becomes so important, especially for the Jews and the Muslims, is because it's very much connected to what they believe will occur in the end times. And again, the Jews believe that they need to rebuild the temple, the third temple, and it needs to be on Mount Moriah, which is in Jerusalem. And currently, what stands there is the Dome of the Rock, which is the third holiest site in Islam. So remember back in, and I wrote the dates down so I'd keep it correct here, 638, the Muslims actually conquered that area and took it away from the Byzantine Empire. And so, I don't remember if you remember from the beginning, but the Jewish temple was destroyed around 70 by the Romans. And so the Jews had always thought that they would rebuild that, but they were dispersed. But it's very much linked to the ushering in of end of times, or I should say kind of the age of the Messiah. And so they believe that third temple needs to be built at Mount Moriah in order for the Messiah to come. Now the issue again is that is an Islamic holy site. I'm going to be running out of time, so I'm going to do a part 2 here. So just to clarify, okay? Hang in.